Welcome to Until All of Us Are Free, a year long multimedia education project dedicated to Black liberation as collective liberation. I am your host and the creator of this project, Ijoma Onuo. So, about 2 weeks ago, I was crying to my therapist. I cry a lot. I try not to wear makeup that runs. I'm usually prepared. I know I'm going to be exhausted afterwards. I might even need a nap. Now, I don't cry every therapy session, but I cry enough that it's not unusual. But this time I was really crying about the work. I was crying because even though I have been launching these projects, even though I have been actively engaging in community building work, in abolition work, especially this year, it really felt like it wasn't enough. It felt like there was nothing I could do that would be enough. And I was feeling hopeless. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was feeling really despondent. And I was crying about that. I was crying about how desperate everything felt and how small my efforts seemed. And my therapist didn't offer a quick solution, didn't tell me that I shouldn't feel this way. In fact, my therapist told me to be prepared to feel this way a lot more because things are dire and because it wants to feel overwhelming. It's designed to feel overwhelming so that we feel like not doing anything else, so that we feel like curling into a ball and just crying in a corner. And my therapist said, I just need to be aware of that and create space for that. And instead of trying to fight it, feel it, and then keep going with my work. So, this month in our beloved community book club, we're reading We Do This Till We Free Us by Miriam Kaba. And I read this for my last book, Be a Revolution. But when you're reading for research, you're kind of skimming, you're pulling out quotes, you're looking for particular statistics, things like that. You're not reading in depth. And a lot of the earlier sections of the book were parts that I didn't really get into that deep in my first read around. So for this book club, I'm reading much more deeply in the hopes of absorbing the content and fostering communication with book club members. And I think it was the next day after my therapy session, I came across this quote, which is early on in the book, and it's from the essay Hope is a Discipline. I'm going to read just this little snippet here. I talk to a lot of young organizers. People reach out to me a lot because I've been organizing for a long time. I'm always telling them your timeline is not the timeline on which movements occur. Your timeline is incidental. Your timeline is only for yourself to mark your growth and your living. But that's a fraction of the living that's going to be done by the universe, and that has already been done by the universe. When you understand that you're really insignificant in the grand scheme of things, then it's a freedom, in my opinion, to actually be able to do the work that's necessary as you see it and to contribute in the ways that you see fit. And I I cannot put fully into words what reading that in this particular moment right after crying to my therapist that nothing I did was enough, what it meant for me and how much I keep going back to that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what that means for me and what it means in the context of this month's focus for Until All of Us Are Free, which is a lifetime of liberation. When I look at that quote, what I see is first and foremost the multi generational tradition of movement work that I'm a part of and the multi generational movement itself. How long this battle for liberation has been, how dynamic it has been, and then within that, how small my part is in it. I've said before that as a writer, I'm trying to do what so many other writers before me have done, what so many writers after me will do, which is find another way to tell our story, to get people to care, to get people to take action. And I've always known in that intellectual level what that means. But to understand what that means in this time when there's this real sense of urgency, to understand what it means that you are part of a struggle that is longer and bigger than you, and that means that your part is just as important and no more or no less important than the people that came before you and the people that will come after. And so, what does that mean for me right now in this sense of urgency? It doesn't mean that I am discarding the sense of urgency that we have. I believe that life is precious. I believe that all of us hurt, harmed, and taken away by these oppressive systems, that every time that happens, it is a failure, it is a tragedy, it is something to be fought, it is something to be mourned, it is something to be grieved. But also, it means that this is not new. And it doesn't mean we normalize it. It means that we recognize that a battle that has been fought for hundreds of years does not likely end in our lifetime. For me personally, that means I have to keep my expectations in check and I have to keep my definitions of success attainable to me. As Kaba said, my timeline means nothing to the movement. My timeline is about my life and my experiences right here. But when we're talking about liberation and our survival as a people, I have to look at it collectively. That's what my work is based in. That's what this project is based in. And that also means my definition of survival and victory has to be collective as well. It also means that I'm going to have a lot of faith in this work. I'm going to have to believe that what I'm doing will help people carry on with this work after I'm gone. I cannot give in to despair. I have to know that as long as we exist, and by we, I mean the collective we, so long as our stories exist, so long as our children or grandchildren exist, so long as we exist in some form, this battle continues on and our victory continues on. If we are fighting for liberation, then how we live matters. It is not just about whether we individually live or die. And so when I'm looking at my little piece of the work and I'm feeling like it's not enough, like it's never going to be enough to take on an entire administration, that's true. But it was never supposed to take on an entire administration. My little work is a little piece of our collective efforts to fight the powers that be that are stronger than whoever is in power. Not only am I a little blip on this timeline, but so is the current president. So is the current Senate. We are all doing our part in this battle. Some of us are fighting for liberation, and some of us are fighting for subjugation. And so all I have is my little piece in this larger battle. I have to make peace with that. I have to let go of ego that tells me that I can end all of this hardship, that I can solely change the entire world. I am and always will be a small piece of this beautiful collective. So let me talk about what my piece is. This project is part of my piece. And I love this project, and it was something that I definitely felt as I was gearing up to start it at the end of last year was needed and needed in the circles with which I move through. When I look around at the people I interact with online and in person, this focus on collective liberation in my community, in the Black community. My little piece is also in my books and has been for over a decade now. My piece is also the in person beloved community gatherings that we have been hosting this year. Every month, getting people together in person to practice being in community, to practice conflict resolution, to practice protecting each other and caring for each other. And our book club, which is not only helping me a lot, like the moment I just talked with y'all about, but is also helping us be aware of the everlasting impact of the little work that we do. But my little piece is not just in these projects. I am blessed to be a writer and movement worker by trade. So my books and my public paid speaking engagements and my main Substack behind the book, those pay my bills. But they afford me a level of freedom and flexibility to do all of this other community work that absolutely does not pay the bills. But I recognize the privilege in that flexibility in that time. And so I want to say the work I do is not just this, not to make y'all feel like you have to do even more, but to understand that there is always work you can do. Your little piece may look vastly different than mine. If you have a 9 to 5, you're in an office, you have all these other commitments. Finding your little piece is still really possible. So, first and foremost, none of this works. None of my work matters if I'm not living my values. As a Black liberationist, as an abolitionist, if I am not living that in how I talk to my children, in how I talk with my partner, in how I build my business, in how I deal with conflict with friends and peers and community members, in how I spend my money, like all of these things matter and are a part of the work in the conversations that I'm having with friends, even when we're just hanging out. That's all a part of the work as well. It is my life that is a part of this work, and that is open to all of you. The harm done by these systems touches every aspect of our life, and that can feel really overwhelming until you realize that it then provides you an abundance of opportunities to make change. How sad would it be if the only way we could make change was to change who was in the White House? And I am not at all saying that we can, because I honestly don't think the system was built to be able to do that. I think it matters much less what happens in the White House than what happens in our neighborhoods. And so we're lucky that's not the case. We don't have to have power to rival all of these corporations putting billions of dollars into these elections, to rival all of this corrupt media and all these other things. No, we can make change in how we talk to our children in the morning. We can make change in what books we're reading. We can make change in how we decide to help a friend who's struggling, and whether or not we engage with mutual aid, in which community shops we frequent, in how we step up when we see someone else being harmed or intimidated in some way. We have the opportunity every day to make real measurable change. And this doesn't mean that we let go of our broader goals. And this is something I actually think I want to talk about more in later episodes, which is talking about our long term, our overall, our North Star goals, our medium term goals, our short term goals, and harm reduction, and how we build toward that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about it just a little bit right now because we're talking a lifetime of liberation, and this is a part of it. I'll use abolition as an example. That's my overarching goal, right? I'm a Black liberationist. My goal is truly liberated Black people. And with that, that means truly liberated everyone, because we aren't free until all of us are free. And so that is my North Star. That is the thing that I know I won't see in my lifetime. And that doesn't make me sad. It's just the truth. It is what it is. But it is something that I know I can push towards every day of my life. And so within that, then I have, what are goals that are a little more achievable within that? I would love to see the end of the prison industrial complex. Will that happen in my lifetime? Maybe. I don't know. I'm 44. I'm getting up there in age, but it could, or it could happen in my kids' generation, right? That is something that feels a little more attainable, and it ties directly to my North Star goal. So that's really important. Okay, so looking at that, as I'm working with that, what are the shorter term goals that can get us there? Well, cutting funding to cops, right? Maybe I can't wake up tomorrow and make it so that we don't have any more police, but I can absolutely promise and try to get all my community members to promise to never vote for anything that will increase a police budget. That is something that moves towards this goal. I can pledge to never call the police unless it is honestly life and death. And I can ask my community members to do the same. And to add to that, I can invest time, money, resources into community conflict and crisis resolution. I can help build alternatives to the prison system, to calling the police. On an even smaller scale, I can be reaching out to schools and asking what they're doing outside of school police officers or calling in police to handle conflict. What are they doing to identify conflict before it escalates? What are they doing to give kids the skills to handle conflict on their own? So just taking this big, huge goal and rolling it down into smaller things I can do, every single one of them that helps support getting to that larger goal means that my work is in alignment. And whenever that larger goal is achieved, my work is a part of it. It's not just about what I do in and with community. I have a duty to this work to live as freely as I can right now, even while these systems stand. And that means that every day in the decisions that I make, I affirm my own life and my own value. That means I care for myself. It means I keep going to therapy. It means I rest. It means that I laugh. It means I have sex. It means I watch funny movies. It means I do art projects. It means I hug my children. It means that I try to be as present in this life now so that these systems can't take it from me while I'm still living. And part of that means I refuse to let these systems take away my joy and take away my sense of accomplishment. If I see my own value and the value of my community members, then I must see the value in this little community work I do. When someone comes up to me after a beloved community gathering and says that these gatherings help them get through the month, I don't get to tell myself it's not enough. It is everything. Because if we are everything, then it is everything. It is the most I can do with my little life in this broader battle that we're all a part of. How I live and the little work I do matters, not because it's the key to everything, but because it is one thread in this giant tapestry of liberation. It may not be the whole picture, but without it, something is definitely missing. So I hope as we close out this month that you're thinking about your piece in this work. What threads are you bringing into this tapestry? What can you do with your little life to help liberate us all? Thank you for joining me for another episode of Until All of Us Are Free, a year-long multimedia education project dedicated to Black liberation as collective liberation. I am your host and the creator of this project, Ijoma Oluo. Be sure to go to untilwearefree.com, where you can not only see episode notes, but you can see all of our past episodes. There was a lot of really wonderful information in most of the episode notes. This one's going to be a little spare, but throughout this month and all of the other months of this project, you'll find a lot of really important information in the episode notes that aren't necessarily in the episodes themselves, so make sure you check those out. It's a great way to expand and deepen this liberation work. That is also where you can choose to become a paid subscriber to this project. This project is currently self-funded and funded by subscribers, and that funding helps us make the best quality content we can and keep it as accessible as possible. So whatever support you can give, whether that's a share or whether that is becoming a paid subscriber, is really important to us and deeply appreciated. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.